Hey folks, welcome to Bear Mountain today. Today we're harvesting some worm castings and kind of just wanted to talk a little bit about our small worm composting system we use for kitchen waste, bokashi as well, and then what we do with the material once we finish harvesting it is we use it in our potting mix primarily, and we also use it to make some extract teas for watering young seedlings. So this bin right here, we use these, I guess they're roughly about 10 quart, if they're that size. Roughly you're looking at something that's about 12 inches by probably about 18 inches, and it's about 10 inches deep. We use kind of these Rubbermaid totes, and we just stack them inside of each other. So like once one bin becomes full, we'll set the next one on it and the worms will migrate up. And then typically after we are getting ready to harvest, we've had another bin with fresh food sitting on top of this one for about probably, it's roughly works out to be about 2 months. It's not a super fast system. Some people can do it faster, but what we're doing is just trying to get the majority of the worms to migrate to the new food. And then what's left is our vermicast. And what we do with the vermicast, it'll probably have some oversized material in it, like maybe some seeds or something that didn't get digested, or there could even be some small paper products or things that the worms didn't eat. But the vast majority of what we get out of this is usable. It's almost, in most cases, it's about, I'd say 100% vermicast. And also too, though, the way this works is you're never going to have 100% no worm eggs in it or no small worms, and we're not going to worry about that too much. The biggest thing that we concern ourselves with is that we get the oversized material out. And then what we do is we'll run it through this 1/4 inch screen and just kind of make sure that the oversized material doesn't go into our finished bucket. And when we're finished sorting it, we just store it in one of these 4-gallon buckets. And typically one of these little Rubbermaid totes will give almost 4 gallons of finished vermicast. So the way our system works is we have essentially at any time about 4 bins working. So we've always got at least every other month we've got another 4 gallons of this material coming out. And like I said, we use it as an inoculant and as a fertilizer for making tea and as an additive to potting up mix. So we don't use it straight. It's usually pretty well diluted into whatever we're trying to make it into. So when I start this still has quite a bit of moisture in it. And in some cases, there's a little bit of undigested paper here. But for the most part, I mean, you're looking at this and it doesn't really have a lot of worms in it. It doesn't have any worms in it at all. So all the worms migrated out. The material is a little still damp, but it'll not so damp that it's so wet that you can't get it through a screen. So that's the other thing too. If the material is too wet, you could spread it out and let it dry a little bit, but I just kind of like spread it out over my screen and I'll just work through the entire bin. Okay, you can kind of see, if you kind of come in close here, you can kind of see that there's materials like sometimes the actual hard outside casing of like a pumpkin or something doesn't digest fully. You know, you got these kinds of things. And we're just gonna basically kind of screen that out or it'll break up. And then in some cases, there's actually still seeds in here that these seeds could still be viable. So what we're gonna do is we wanna make sure we catch those things and not let them really get into any kind of mix that we're doing. Otherwise, you know, when you put this kind of stuff in your potting mix, what you end up with is little pumpkins growing along with your tomatoes or whatever. So, but the vast majority is you can't see, there's very, no worms really. I mean, they finished in here. And some of the material, like I said, didn't digest. And what I'll do with the material, there's a worm. What I'll do with the material that didn't digest is I'll put that, see, there's a worm, still alive. I'll put the oversized material in the next bin. So it'll just continue to kind of rot down. So this stuff, some of the cardboard didn't digest. And sometimes that happens, and that's not that big of a deal. Well, there's quite a few worms in this corner. I guess they were still working on that corner. Okay, sometimes when you go through, you can find, worms that, I'll just take the big guys that I can find, and I'll just put them in like a coffee can to, it's not a perfect thing. Some of them will slide through. It's not that big of a deal. But what I'll do with these guys is I'll put them in the other worm bin, or I'll put them in a compost pile. See, there's a pile. The guys are working on something right there. And I try to do this on a day when it's not too bright, because UV is not a good thing for worms. And today is kind of a nice overcast day, so it's a good day to do it. So it's just a matter of, continually just kind of working it through. It's like I said, if one slips through, I'm not going to worry about it. The idea is I got the majority of them. Lots of people have different ways of doing it. Like they can put it on a tarp and kind of shine a light on it, and then scoop stuff off and just keep scooping up until you run down to the point where there's nothing left. And I guess I'm just... I guess I got to keep doing something. I'm not patient enough to do that. Another option is you can set this aside and just say, you know what, I'm not going to bother with it for another month, and then the worms will finish themselves off of whatever they're doing, and eventually they'll die out because they run out of food. Worm populations tend to stay in their bin to the level of food that's supplied. So if their food source begins to dwindle as they die off, they just won't be laying eggs. So population always tends to grow to the size of the food available. It's not a perfect world, but it does work. So it's just a matter of going through the entire bin and kind of getting that sorted out. And then I'll show you here in a second what it looks like after it's been sifted. Find any other guys. Some of these guys are still pretty good size. It's amazing. This has been sitting for almost, like I said, almost 2 months. And they're still working on it. Okay, let's take a look at what we got here. So you can harvest worms at the same time. Some people even have gone so far as they've made like a trommel system where they've automated it. So if you're doing like a high volume, and we're not, but if you were doing, cubic feet or yards of these things with a lot of worm bins, you'd want to have something definitely more automated. And like I said, any oversized material, I'm not trying to get it down to perfect. What I'm trying to get to is a good sifted material that I can use in my potting. So some of this can just be used as an inoculant in a compost pile, because I've done that before. If you go back and look at the video we just did about making a no work, no turn compost pile. This is where we get our worms to inoculate the pile and go to work. So like there's a lot of oversized material in here. Even though there's technically some compost in it, I'm not really going to bother with it too much. So I'm just going to kind of work it a little more, and then I'm just going to take it and put it into the compost pile. Now it's got a bit of worm castings, but it's also, if I put this in the compost pile, I've got good biology in it too, which is also important. So we'll just set that aside. All right, here is our sifted castings. We still got a few oversized, maybe some eggshell in here you can see. But after I go through the entire thing, this is what we'll use for making compost worm tea. We'll use it for making, our potting mix, extracts and things of that nature, and for helping once we transplant or bump things up. So that's pretty good stuff. So it's just a matter of, going through the entire bin and kind of, working its way through. And then what we do is when the next bin such as this is full, meaning that we can't seem to, it doesn't seem to drop so much anymore, and it looks like it's at least 75 to 80% of castings in it, we'll say, okay, it's time to build a new bin on top of it. And this emptied one then will be the next one that goes on top. We'll put fresh bedding in, new food, and start the migration process all over. So it's kind of a constant process. And in our 4-bin system that we keep running, we take one of these out, probably it works out to be about every 3 months. Takes about a month to fill it, let them work on it, and takes about another 2 months for them to finish it off, and then we harvest. So if you kind of look at it from that standpoint, we're pulling out probably 12 gallons a year roughly, maybe sometimes a little more, 12 to 15 gallons of finished castings. And that's more than enough for the size of our garden and the size of the things we do to give us enough to make worm teas and additions to potting mix. Okay, so that's really it. Just kind of repeat and kind of go through the process, and then we'll, like I said, we'll capture it in our 4-gallon pail. And like I said, there might be some extra worm eggs and some small worms that slip through here, and they'll just continue working on whatever is in there for them to work on, but they kind of tend to die out pretty fast. Roughly, maybe in a month or so after we fill the bucket, there's nothing left. They've either migrated out or they've, gone on to worm heaven.
Is there anything you can't put in this?
Yeah, we don't tend to put like food scraps, like I have like onions and citrus or meats or dairy or anything like that, don't go into this directly. But what we will do for food scraps like that is we run it through a bokashi fermentation process, and then we'll put that material after it's fully fermented. We can and we have added that into the worm bins, and there hasn't been any problems at all with acidity, as long as we don't put too much in at a time, and we tend to mix it with enough carbon, like egg cartons or shredded cardboard or something like that, which tends to kind of break it up. So we'll end up like 60% bokashi, 40% carbon in it, and it seems to work pretty well.
Can you put coffee grounds in?
Coffee grounds, they love coffee grounds. You can put those in straight. Okay. Well,
so it's getting chilly. My hands are cold. Where do we put this worm?
Interesting you should mention chili, because in wintertime you want to have these guys protected. That's an important thing. They do their best work between, roughly at around 70 degrees. They'll really slow down in terms of their activity and their feeding. The lower the temperature goes below 70, they can survive, and they will survive at 40 degrees. If you left them in a garage, you just wouldn't have to feed them much, in the wintertime. You don't want them to freeze or the bin to freeze solid. So you wouldn't want to leave it outside in a cold environment, because the worms will die, but the eggs will probably live on. But the idea here is we want a constant system working. So in our environment in wintertime, we basically, what we did is we took some insulated foam board, laid it on the garage floor, and then we put a heating mat that we would normally use for seedlings that has a temperature sensor in it so that we can keep the bins at 70 degrees. So that bottom heat is very gentle and it keeps the worms kind of happy.
So 70 is the optimum.
That's the optimum. On the flip side, going too hot, I mean, they don't do very well over 80. So
Who does?
Yeah, who does? So if you end up in the summertime and it's like, you know, going really hot, what some people have done is they've taken like ice and put it in the bins to kind of cool them down. Keep them out of the sun, you know, keep them in a shaded place where there's air circulation. And usually in most cases, unless you live in Death Valley, you can probably keep these guys, you know, going just fine. They'll live. They just don't like it. If they have a place to retreat that's cooler, you know, like a bottom of a bin, they'll tend to move towards that. But overall, they just do their best work at right around 70 degrees.
Okay, and this is the stuff that we add to water to fertilize new seedlings that will be starting in the next couple of weeks.
Right, and it isn't much at all. You know, so like when we make, you know, a gallon of worm tea inoculant, we use about that much. You know, that's a handful, not even a handful. It looks like maybe 2 tablespoons. Because what we're going for is the biology that's in it. And the nutrients to a lesser degree, but it's the biology that we use that I think really gives the plants a good start. And there's also the dark color of these. The worm castings have a lot of humates in it. And you know, good acids and things of that nature that the plant roots really helps them out. So yeah, you don't need to use much of it at a time to make, you know, quite a few gallons. Some people think, oh, you need to use cups of it. You don't really need to do that. Nor do we aerate. So what we're really doing are extracts. So we're not actually brewing a worm compost tea that's aerated brew. It's simply we're taking this material and we're putting it in a paint strainer sack, and we run water over it to extract everything out of this, and it, you know, gets a darker color, and that's what we use to water. So you just make it up when you use it, and it's gone. Well, the nice thing about this is it's free.
Yeah.
Again, you know,
Worm
and this is
castings.
fertility that you can have around your house.
And get rid of stuff.
And get rid of stuff. You know, if you eat a lot of fruits and things of that nature, fruits are great to put in it, as long as you know you have enough carbon to offset it. One of the big mistakes that people make when they're feeding their worm bin is they put in stuff that has too much moisture in it, and then you get a leachate out the bottom of it. We run our worm bins with enough carbon that we don't get leachate. Leachate for us is kind of a waste, because what that means is there's some part of this that is going to leach out nutrients. So you can run worm bins if you have the right amount of carbon versus your food. You just got to watch it. You can run these things without making any leachate in the bottom of the bin, and that's what we strive for. So just thought we would show you, you know, how we harvest this stuff and what we use, talk about what we use it for. And I think, you know, we'll show some stuff as we do our seeding this spring, how we're making the extracts and stuff of that nature. But, you know, I think this is just a real simple thing for people to have. These guys, you know, they do a lot of work, these little worms, and they turn out some really good stuff. Anyway, thanks for watching today, guys, and we appreciate it. Now, by the way, just as a shout out to everybody, thank you so much for watching us. We hit 1 million total views this month.
Actually, we're a little past it.
Just a little past it now, but we hit it right around Thanksgiving.
So awesome.
It is just crazy awesome. So thank you again for everybody for watching.
Keep watching.
And please keep watching. We really enjoy it. And thanks again. Stay safe, and we'll catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.